Actually, welcome to the King's Report News Hour for the fourth day in the first month, 17th year of Cheongi. This is Tim Hilder sitting in for the second king of Cheongi, Kyung Moon. And I'm without my tech team today, but I will do my best to make something here that will be enjoyable and informative for you. Right now, let's take our sojourn around the kingdom. 61 degrees right now in Cheongpyeong, Tennessee, under cloudy skies. Periods of rain this morning, otherwise clouds giving way to some sun. Breezy and warm, 69 for a high tonight. Rain at times, low of 44. Father's hometown, Cheongju in North Pyongan province of Korea. Mostly clear and 36 right now. Low clouds and low of 34 tonight. Tomorrow, low clouds, breezy in the afternoon. High of 56. And then at the Cheongung Palace in Northeast Pennsylvania, it is 34 with sleet and a wintry mix changing to snow, continuing for at least 60 minutes, it says. So, yeah, this is a Friday morning, not a very good morning to be going out, I guess. Anyway, the forecast for today is rain at times, high of 38. Tonight, areas of drizzle early this evening, otherwise mostly cloudy and low of 34. Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground, Limestone County, Texas, partly cloudy and 48. Cooler with intervals of clouds and sunshine, high of 64 today. Tonight, partly cloudy and low of 53. At the Suncheon Palace in Korea, it is 41 degrees. And let's see, clear skies now and clear skies through the night, 34 degrees for a low. Tomorrow, nice and warm with plenty of sun, high of 66. And at the Gunma Palaces in Japan, right now 42 degrees, mostly cloudy, clear to partly cloudy skies, low of 29 tonight. Tomorrow, plenty of sunshine, high of 61. And in Guangzhou, Guangdong province of China, 74 degrees right now. And let's see, clear now and remaining clear through the night, 63 degrees for a low. Tomorrow, very warm, sun followed by high clouds, 79 degrees. All right, let's go to Father's Word. I'm in the book on the path of life. It says here, path of life. Oh, I see. Our Life in the Spiritual Realm is the title of the book, and the title of chapter 1 is the Path of Life. And I am here in section 3.2, where Father says in 1990, February 28th, planet Earth is the production line for creating people of the kingdom of heaven. People are not produced in the spirit world. They come from the earth. God created the earth that we live on as the factory to produce his people. Then why did God divide Adam and Eve into male and female from only male and female form, only to see this followed by the fall that degenerated it to our present form and circumstances? The basis for reproduction cannot be found in God alone, for he is vertically positioned and without physical form. So why did God create Adam and Eve as physical beings? Well, so that he could govern over the physical world through them. That's the Father's explanation. All right, and so then, so Adam and Eve were to give God away to experience his physical world directly, yes, through them. And because he would take on Adam's body, and also he would be in Eve as well. He would be in their spiritual mind, their spirit mind. He would be in their spirit mind. Okay. All right. Okay, let's go and see what is going on in the world. So, President Trump had his the first meeting of his Board of Peace. So let's take a look at that. I'm not going to share my screen with you today because I'm broadcasting, sharing, and my computer won't handle it. And so I'm just going to ask you to trust me that, yes, the articles really are here. Okay. I'm sure you can. All right, let's take a look at Time Magazine's five key takeaways from Trump's first Gaza Board of Peace meeting. And while he's doing this, by the way, he's also getting ready to, apparently, getting ready to bomb Iran. So a bit of a contradiction here, but anyway, let's see what's going on. President Donald Trump convened the inaugural meeting of his newly formed Board of Peace at the United States Institute of Peace headquarters on Thursday, unveiling funding pledges and outlining plans for Gaza's reconstruction. Trump first announced the initiative at the World Economic Forum in Davos last month, presenting it as part of Phase 2 of his UN-endorsed 20-point peace plan for Gaza. He invited dozens of countries to join the board, but several close U.S. allies have hesitated to participate or refused to do so, amid concerns that the structure could sideline the United Nations. Reports that permanent membership would be granted to countries that contribute $1 billion in cash within the first year have also raised questions about whether authoritarian governments could influence the body. The meeting brought together Trump, who serves as chairman of the board, and chairman of the board for life. You know, that's Time magazine, I think, was going soft on Trump by not including that phrase. But what guarantee does he have that this is going to be for life? I mean, how can he prevent people from removing him as chairman? I don't know. That's a little bit of a mystery there. We'll have to see. But chairman for life is, yeah, we'll have to see. Okay, so Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, son-in-law Jared Kushner, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and representatives from participating countries. FIFA President Gianni Infantino was the only attendee not serving in a political role. Trump opened by praising board members and criticizing allies who have not joined the initiative, accusing them of playing cute. Here are 5 takeaways from the meeting. Trump announced that Trump announced that the United States would contribute $10 billion to the Board of Peace. And where is he getting this? Where is he getting this $10 billion, right? Well, same place he gets all the other money, or most of the other money, which is that the Treasury Department's going to issue Treasury bills, and people are going to buy those. In other words, lend money, and then the Federal Reserve is going to buy up those bills and print new money in order to do that. So the $10 billion to the Board of Peace. This is so money that's just created out of nowhere. The Board of Peace is showing how a better future can be built, starting right here in this room, he said. I want to let you know that the United States is going to make a contribution of $10 billion to the Board of Peace. Of course, he did not say when, did he? It could be, $1 billion each over the next 10 years or something like that. I don't know. He did not clarify whether his administration has formally requested congressional approval for these funds, which would be required. Yeah, good point. President Trump recently seems to not really worry too much about congressional approval. Like with the voter ID, he says, we're going to have voter ID, whether Congress approves it or not. So I don't know. Yeah, very interesting. We've had great support for that number, Trump's added. We have? I hadn't heard that there was a public discussion going on whether or not to donate $10 billion to this Board of Peace. That number is a very small number when you look at that compared to the cost of war. That's 2 weeks of fighting. It's a very small number. Well, that is certainly true. Okay. If it serves that purpose, if $10 billion could really buy you 2 weeks of peace, that would be an excellent investment. But you have to wonder, still, where is this money coming from? General Jasper Jeffers, appointed commander of the planned international stabilization force for Gaza, said Indonesia, Morocco, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, and Albania have committed troops to the force. Egypt and Jordan, he said, have agreed to train police. For the last Okay, Egypt and Jordan, huh? For the last few months, we've had a team on the ground of U.S. military experts preparing the infrastructure for the ISF, Jeffers said. The team is already operating from a combined joint operations center that's going to be the headquarters for the entire ISF. He said the force will operate along 5 sectors, beginning in Rafah. The midterm objective, I believe Rafah is the border between Gaza and Egypt, isn't it? The midterm objective is to continue to expand sector by sector, all moving to our long-term 12,000 police and 20,000 ISF soldiers, he said. Okay, that's 32,000 for a population of, I think it's still 2.1 million. Jeffers also confirmed that Indonesia will serve as deputy commander of the ISF. Trump announced that 9 countries had pledged a combined $7 billion towards Gaza relief. I'm pleased to announce that Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, UAE, Morocco, Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Uzbekistan, and Kuwait have all contributed more than $7 billion towards the relief package. Let's take a look at this. I think these are all Islamic countries, right? Yes. Yes, they are. Okay, so, okay. That's interesting. Until now, people have often criticized the Islamic world for not really stepping up to help Palestinians, but looks like they at least are contributing money, although they still don't want to bring Palestinians onto their territory. The pledges come amid a fragile ceasefire in Gaza following the initial phase of Trump's 20-point peace plan. According to Gaza's health ministry, 603 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli strikes since the ceasefire deal brokered by Trump and mediated by Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt came into effect on October 10, 2025. Trump also said the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Assistance has agreed to raise an additional $2 billion for the support of Gaza. Japan will host fundraising events for the Board of Peace, Trump said, with expected participation from South Korea, Philippines, Singapore, China, and Russia. Fundraising events. Dinners maybe? I don't know. Additionally, FIFA will be hoping to raise a total of $75 million for projects in Gaza, Trump said. Trump suggested the Board of Peace would effectively oversee the United Nations. Now that's interesting, right? This is why some of the European countries are sort of reticent about joining, because they like the United Nations, because the United Nations is a global organization that is very clearly under their control, and Soros and China and so forth have a strong influence on the United Nations, and now Trump is saying that the Board of Peace would be sort of above the United Nations. Quote, Trump said, the United Nations is going to be much stronger, and the Board of Peace is going to almost be looking over the United Nations and making sure it runs properly. While he said he was, quote, working closely, unquote, with the UN, Trump added that the organization has not lived up to its tremendous potential. The remarks came as UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has warned the body faces imminent financial collapse unless member states reform funding rules or pay outstanding dues. The U.S. currently owes $2,196 million to the UN's regular operating budget, including $767 million for this year. And I think I read somewhere a few minutes ago that they paid about $160 million, something like that. But that's not even close to what they owe this year. And there's a lot of reluctance in the Congress, justified reluctance in the Congress about funding the United Nations. We're going to strengthen the United Nations. We're going to make sure its facilities are good. They need help, and they need help money-wise. We're going to help them money-wise, Trump said, without specifying an amount. Throughout the meeting, Trump repeatedly described Iran as a threat to the stability of the entire region. So here he is at the Board of Peace, and he's talking about basically Iran, which, when he mentions Iran, it's in the context that the United States looks very much like it's going to go to war with Iran. Now is the time for Iran to join us on a path that will complete what we're doing. And if they join us, that will be great. If they, hold on a second, if they don't join us, that will be great too. But it will be a very different path, he said. They cannot continue to threaten the stability of the entire region, and they must make a deal. If that doesn't happen, maybe I can understand, but bad things will happen. So, and here he is at the Board of Peace, and he's talking about war. All right, well, the warning comes amid mounting speculation about possible U.S. military action against Iran. The U.S. has expanded its military presence in the region. Trump confirmed that the U.S. has ordered 22 additional B-2 stealth bombers, the same aircraft previously used to strike 3 Iranian nuclear sites. We do have some work to do with Iran. They can't have a nuclear weapon. It's very simple, Trump said. They can't have peace in the Middle East if they have a nuclear weapon. And they can't have a nuclear weapon. And they've been told that very strongly. Trump added that whether a deal is reached or whether the U.S. will need to, quote, take it a step further, unquote, should become clear probably over the next 10 days, in quotes. Meanwhile, Representative Ro Khanna of California said he and Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky will seek a vote next week to limit the president's ability to use force against Iran without congressional approval. Trump officials say there's a 90% chance of strikes on Iran. He can't without Congress, Khanna wrote on social media. A similar effort failed last June, nearly a week after the president ordered strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities without consulting Congress. All right, so that's what's happened at the Board of Peace. So peace in Gaza, war in Iran, it looks like. But President Trump pledging $10 billion. Again, I guess this is going to be, well, it'll be sent before Congress, I suppose, unless he's going to pay it out of his own pocket. But I don't think he has 10 billion. He might have 1 or 2, but not 10 billion. So we'll have to continue to follow this, and it's still sketchy as to what is actually going to happen. But it's interesting that he wants to have this Board of Peace sort of overlooking and looking over the shoulder of the UN, I guess, and he seems to think of this Board of Peace as an organization that is going to reform the United Nations and somehow make the United Nations work better, he says, and also give them help money-wise, apparently. But yeah, there are a lot of questions about that. A lot of questions about that. Okay. Yeah. And meanwhile, here on the Hill, there's another story about President Trump. Trump's plan for Iran. It says here that President Trump is reportedly weighing a limited strike on Iran in the coming days as he seeks to build maximum leverage in negotiations and prepares the U.S. military for a prolonged battle if diplomacy fails. Aerial tracker websites have shown dozens of U.S. fighter jets and tankers en route to Europe and the Middle East this week, a massive airlift operation that comes as Trump has been briefed on a range of options from limited strikes on symbolic targets to a sustained campaign to oust the ruling mullahs. Well, as I've said before, the people of Iran need to stand up and oust their own mullahs. They can't depend on the United States to come in and do that work for them. But unfortunately, I think maybe President Trump is being influenced by people who want him to go in and sort of maybe somehow take out the mullahs. Of course, that's what President Trump went into Venezuela and took out one sort of mullah, Maduro. He took out one leader, and there's been a huge change in Venezuela just over the past 6 weeks as a result of that. That's true. But really, at some point, the people of that country need to stand up and fight for their own freedom and secure their own freedom. You can't expect the United States to do all that for them. That's the kind of nation building that got us into trouble in Iraq already. The Wall Street Journal reported Thursday that Trump is leaning toward a more limited military strike to pressure Iran to accept U.S. demands, which include neutering its nuclear program, scaling down its missile arsenal, and stopping its funding of regional armed proxies. Trump could then scale up attacks if Iran doesn't budge. You'll be finding out over the next probably 10 days, Trump said Thursday. He said that at the Board of Peace, of course. I think this is very likely, Michael Makovsky, President and Chief Executive of the Jewish Institute for National Security of America, which backs military action against Iran, said of a potential strike. I've been talking to very, very senior officials. I get a sense that that's where they're heading. I don't think you're bringing all those assets to the region just for a midnight hammer type of event. You're talking about more likely a longer campaign. I think Trump really means it. A senior regional official warned that limited strikes may undermine any efforts at diplomacy. I think any strikes will make the Iranians walk away from the talks, but how it evolved after that, I don't know. It's anybody's guess, the official told The Hill. Iran and Israel, like the U.S., appear to be preparing for talks to falter. Satellite images over Iran show the country had constructed a concrete shield over a new facility at a sensitive military site bombed by Israel in 2024, Reuters reported Wednesday. Ahead of talks with the U.S. this week, Tehran conducted live fire drills in the Strait of Hormuz, the narrow waterway of the Persian Gulf through which 20% of the world's traded oil passes, and held annual war games with Russia on Thursday. Israeli forces, meanwhile, remain on heightened alert as its leaders push for military action against Iran. A meeting of Israel's Security Cabinet was moved to Sunday from Thursday, two Israeli defense officials told the New York Times. Another attack on Iran 8 months after the U.S. struck 3 of the country's nuclear sites in Operation Midnight Hammer would have major implications for the region and could be met with a fierce barrage of missile strikes from Tehran on U.S. and Israeli forces. Trump is trying to leverage the military threat to get concessions from Iran, and so the administration has every incentive to raise the threat publicly, said Jamal Abdi, the executive director of the National Iranian American Council. That doesn't mean a strike isn't imminent, but there are good military options to advance U.S. or Israeli goals or support protesters, especially not quick and cheap options. He pointed out that while Trump has been far more willing to use military force in ways his predecessors have avoided, such operations are always, quote, one and done, unquote, actions with high symbolism and low investment, like the abduction of former Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro and the order to drone strike that killed Iranian General Qasem Soleimani in January 2020. That doesn't likely exist for Iran, Abdi told The Hill. It's unclear whether Iran is willing to go beyond its commitments in the Obama-era nuclear deal that Trump withdrew from in 2018. Tehran claims its enrichment of uranium is only for peaceful purposes and says it will not give up its nuclear program completely, but the country has indicated a willingness to discuss curbs on it. Well, the country, Iran, has lots and lots and lots of oil. And so you have to wonder, why do they need nuclear energy? I think that's a reason why many people are skeptical of Iran's motivation. That actually, and of course, they're always talking about wiping Israel off the map, and obviously a nuclear weapon would help them do that. So I think it's quite understandable that people are extremely skeptical when Iran says that, oh, we're only doing it for peaceful purposes. Well, that's what everybody says. North Korea says, oh, just for peaceful purposes, no worry. You know, everybody develops nuclear weapons for, quote, peaceful purposes, unquote, but then it's not so peaceful. What's off limits, however, is a ballistic missile program. The Trump administration has made clear that the program and Iran's support for terrorist proxies must also be part of the talks, which Iran continues to reject. Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff met with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi for 3 hours in Geneva on Tuesday, but the two sides walked away with no deal on peace. And Vice President Vance later told Fox News the talks went well in some respects, but in other ways, it was very clear that the president has set some red lines that the Iranians are not yet willing to actually acknowledge and work through. On Wednesday, senior U.S. national security advisors met in the Situation Room at the White House to discuss Iran. Tehran is expected to submit a written proposal in the coming days on how to resolve its impasse with Washington, a senior U.S. official confirmed to News Nation, the Hill's sister network. The advisors were told to expect all military forces deployed to the region to be in place by mid-March, according to the official. The U.S. is reportedly preparing for a weeks-long military operation against Iran if the country won't agree to Trump's terms. The campaign, like a joint U.S.-Israeli effort, will be far larger in scope than the Israeli-led 12-day war last June, during which the U.S. bombed several of Iran's underground nuclear facilities. After the killing of thousands of protesters by the Iranian regime, Trump appeared close to striking the country in early January. He held off, however, as the U.S. was building up an armada in the region in an effort to bring Tehran to the table. The surge in U.S. forces now includes 2 aircraft carriers, the U.S. Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. Ford. The latter comes straight from the Caribbean, where it was positioned to pressure the government of Maduro, and there are strike groups of destroyers, cruisers, submarines, dozens of refueling tankers, and fighter jets and air defenses. Defense officials expect the USS Gerald R. Ford to be in the region by early next week. Iran also has had time to prepare, with satellite images showing the country buried tunnel entrances at one of the nuclear sites bombed by the U.S. during Israel's 12-day war, reinforced tunnel entrances near another, and repaired missile bases struck during the conflict, Reuters reported. Father was very clear that he does not want a war between people of faith. And I think this would qualify. So that was Father's red line. And it looks like President Trump is about to cross that red line in terms of Father. And, you know, of course, Father would understand the need to prevent Iran from developing a nuclear weapon. But his concern, and this was, you know, he voiced this very strongly when the Bushes went to war in Iraq. He voiced it very strongly that we cannot have a war between people of faith, because that is a religious war, and religious wars are actually the worst kind of wars. They're the most that's where the worst atrocities are committed in religious wars. Father wants people of faith to be uniting against communism, not to be fighting wars among themselves or between themselves. So I'm very concerned that this is one of the kinds of wars that the Father would not be able to bless, or not child would bless, but I don't know if he was to bless any war, but he would be very angry about this war, I think, if it actually happened again. And already the United States, of course, as this article said, the United States has bombed Iran already recently, and this is going to be kind of a repeat of that, only more so, and people are going to die, and it's going to make it more difficult for the religions to unite around a true Father. So in that sense, I think this is a very unfortunate development that is going on here. And one place was New York Times, I think, a headline of the New York Times about this situation. You know, he's here, as Trump weighs Iran's strikes, he declines to make clear case for why or why now. Let's see if we can see it once. See if they'll let us read this one. Probably not, but we can try. No, absolutely not. Okay, I have to give him money, and I'm not going to do that. Okay. But yes, why is he striking Iran right now? And Is it because he thinks that the protesters have brought Iran to its knees, and now it's an easy thing now to do to bring them down? And why? Why is he striking Iran exactly? Anyway, President Trump has not really explained that. Now, in the Congress, there is a move to pass a law that says that President Trump has to get to congressional approval before he's able to take military action against Iran. Probably not going to pass, but it may be a good idea, though. Probably is going to be a good idea for him to have to go to Congress and at least explain why this is going to happen right now. But those who say that Israel and Zionists are behind this whole thing seem to have some grounds for saying that in the current situation where there's a lack of a real explanation on why this is going on. Okay. All right, let's go to something else now. Here, Takaichi, the Prime Minister of Japan, is speaking in her legislature, the Diet, and she's talking about China. Let's see what she has to say. Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi warned of growing Chinese, quote, coercion, unquote, in her first post-election speech to Parliament on Friday, pledging to overhaul defense strategy, ease curbs on military exports, and strengthen critical supply chains. Takaichi's 4-month tenure has been marked by a diplomatic dispute with China after she said Japan could use military force to respond to any attack on Taiwan that also threatens Japanese territory. And Japan has territory that's, very close to Taiwan, just I think 100 miles or so. Fresh from turning a fragile majority into a landslide victory in this month's lower house election, Takaichi outlined an agenda to counter what she sees as a mounting economic and security threat from China and its regional partners. With her ruling coalition now holding more than 2/3 of seats, she faces little political resistance. Japan faces its most severe and complex security environment since World War II, Takaichi said, pointing to China's widening military activity and closer security ties with Russia, as well as North Korea's growing nuclear missile capability. She said the government would revise Japan's 3 core security documents this year to produce a new defense strategy and would accelerate a review of military export rules to expand overseas sales and strengthen defense companies. A policy panel of Takaichi's Liberal Democratic Party proposed on Friday to scrap rules that limit military exports to non-lethal equipment such as body armor, the Kyodo News Agency said. Such a change could significantly widen the range of defense equipment that Japan firms can sell overseas. China has intensified its attempts to unilaterally change the status quo through force or coercion in the East China Sea and South China Sea, Takaichi told lawmakers. Takaichi has hastened a military buildup launched in 2023 that will double Japan's defense spending to 2% of GDP by the end of March, making it one of the world's biggest military spenders despite its pacifist constitution. Yes, and let me repeat, the Constitution always says, whatever the Supreme Court says, it says. So you can have you can have an Article 9 in the Constitution that says, no, we're not going to have a military. Okay, but self-defense force, that's all right, right? Okay. So Japan has a very strong military already. Yeah. And of course, Takaichi is building it up, which is a good thing, by the way. It is a good thing. Japan needs to stop pretending that it's pretending behind its sort of a mask of self-righteousness, and it needs to take responsibility for security in the region. And I know China especially talks about the rise of militarism, and South Korea sometimes also, and North Korea. But the fact of the matter is that the situation is very, very different today from what it was in the 1930s, 1920s, and 30s. Civilian control of the military is very well established in Japan now. And you're not going to have a situation like you had in the 20s and 30s and 40s where a military general takes on the position of a prime minister or something like that. That's not going to happen. At least, well, yes, that's not going to happen. I think I can say that definitively. So Japan is on the good, they're one of the good guys now, and good guys need to be strong so that bullies and bad guys like China will stand down. She also announced plans for a National Intelligence Council chaired by her to consolidate information gathered across agencies, including police and defense ministry. Japan does not have foreign or domestic intelligence services comparable to the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency or Britain's MI5, and this has always puzzled me, and yet, Japan has some of the best information. Where are they getting the information? Well, I'll tell you where they're getting it. They're getting it from their zaibats, their large corporations that have offices and branches around the world. And one of their key missions is to gather information in the countries where they're stationed. And so, and this information is funneled to the government from these business organizations. And as a result, even without a CIA, even without an MI5, Japan is, right up there with the quality of information about quality of intelligence of what's going on. For example, during the COVID, I guess, situation, and China, there was some question about what China's actual economic output was. Japanese corporations stationed people outside of Chinese factories and counted the number of trucks that were leaving the factory, counted the number of chimneys that had smoke coming out of them or not coming out of them, and used that to calculate the actual output of Chinese economy. Much better result than any other source. Beyond security, Takaichi proposed setting up a Japanese version of the U.S. Committee on Foreign Investment to screen overseas investment in sensitive sectors, and said rules governing land purchases by foreigners would be reviewed, as China's been buying up land in Hokkaido, land in Okinawa, for example, and yes, so finally Takaichi is doing something about that. That's been a bone of contention for conservatives in Japan, the amount of land that the Chinese have been buying up. She pledged to reduce dependence on specific countries. Guess who that would be, right? Gee, I wonder who she's talking about. By strengthening supply chains and working with allies to secure critical materials, including rare earths, around Minamitori, a remote Pacific island. Okay, that's Minamitori Shima. So there's a string of islands that goes south from near Tokyo, and Minamitori Shima would be one of those islands, hundreds of miles, maybe 1,000 miles from Tokyo. Takaichi also promised to speed the restart of, excuse me, hold on. All right. Speed the restart of reactors idled since the Fukushima nuclear plant disaster in 2011. A nation that does not take on challenges has no future, she said in concluding remarks. Politics that only seeks to protect cannot inspire hope. All right, so that is what she said today in the Diet in the Japanese legislature. Yeah. And I think probably her high opinion or public opinion support is going to continue at that level. They say that she has sort of an idol quality to her. And people appreciate a prime minister who you can see is working hard, for one thing, and is appears to be at least forthright and honest, and she gives that image Whether she is or not, I don't know. She is a politician, so maybe not, but she does give that image, and that has inspired Japanese young people a great deal. We'll see how far that carries her. All right, all right, let's see here. Let's see. All right, let's take a look at Epoch Times and see what they're saying. Let's see here. Their lead story is that the judge temporarily blocks referendum to redraw Virginia's congressional map. All right, not interested in that. IMF says China's state-led growth model is hurting other economies, calls for subsidy cuts. Okay, so we can take a look at that. Because yes, China, of course, everybody knows this. One of the reasons they're able to undercut prices around the world is because the government is subsidizing the production and the export, not just production, but also the transportation of goods. Let's see what the IMF is saying right now about China. The International Monetary Fund has sharply criticized China's state-led growth model, warning that heavy industrial subsidies, debt-financed investment, and weak domestic demand are distorting the economy at home and creating damaging spillovers abroad. So what was it? We had that story several days ago, I guess, where, was it The Hill? No, it was Political, wasn't it? Writing as though this whole thing about China growing 5% a year, despite their collapsing real estate market, that just shows that how strong their economy is. Complete propaganda. But IMF here is saying that no, that the economy at home is being distorted, and it has weak domestic demand. This is what IMF says, and also, but this is also because of the subsidies that the government is giving the industries. This is also hurting other countries' economies. The February 18 report followed the conclusion of the IMF's most recent Article 4 review of China and its economic policies. IMF analysts estimated that Beijing, as of 2023, spent about 4% of its gross domestic product to stabilize key industries, and that figure has been broadly stable over recent years. The report said that China's industrial policies are giving rise to international spillovers and pressures. It noted there is a lack of official information on the scale of China's industrial policy support. Lack of official information. And even the official information that is there is, made up as they go along. The financial institution of the IMF, citing a 2025 study, estimated that priority sectors, mostly in high-tech manufacturing, receive substantial subsidies in the form of government grants, tax benefits, cheaper credit, and subsidized land from the government. The IMF recommended that China scale back what it described as unwarranted industrial policy support, saying that doing so would reduce physical costs, improve productivity, and mitigate external imbalances. Well, what are the chances that China is going to say, oh, okay, right, IMF says so, I guess we better do that? Zero, zero, zero. I don't know what the Chinese equivalent of the middle finger is, but whatever it is, that's what's going to happen here. But this is interesting because it shows us how the IMF sees the Chinese economy and the weakness of the Chinese economy. In particular, the IMF said that Beijing should slash state support for domestic industry by half, while noting that weak domestic demand has made China more reliant on manufacturing exports as a source of growth. Higher net exports, and this means that they're dependent to a large extent on the health of the world economy. So if the world economy goes into a recession, that's going to hit China very hard. Higher net exports have also resulted in the emergence of external imbalances, which, with adverse spillovers to trading partners, IMF said. China's large economic size and heightened global trade tensions make reliance on exports less viable for sustaining robust growth going forward. All right, so But China's going to say, we don't care what you say. All right, let's see here. Radio Free Asia resumes broadcasts to China, countering CCP global influence. All right, well, that's good news. I think they stopped for a while, didn't they? RFA and other U.S.-funded outlets are strategically important in bringing uncensored information to the Chinese public, advocates said. Radio Free Asia has partially resumed broadcasts in Mandarin, Tibetan, and Uyghur to mainland China as announced by its CEO on February 17th after suspension of operations last year due to a significant U.S. government funding cut. We are proud to have resumed providing some of the world's only independent reporting on these regions in the local languages, RFA President and CEO Bei Fang wrote in a post on LinkedIn. She stated that the restoration of broadcasting was made possible by a private contract with transmission services, but rebuilding the network would require continued funding from new congressional approvals. All right, well, good news there. Let's see here. Florida lawmakers approved renaming Palm Beach Airport after Trump. Okay. Trump orders release of government files on aliens and UFOs. Well, Father's interested in UFOs. He believes that that these will lead people to understand spirit world. President Trump has ordered government agencies to release information about extraterrestrial life and related phenomena in a late-night February 19 Truth Social post. Based on the tremendous interest shown, I will be directing the Secretary of War and other relevant departments and agencies to begin the process of identifying and releasing government files related to alien and extraterrestrial life, unidentified aerial phenomena, and unidentified flying objects, and any and all other information connected to these highly complex but extremely interesting and important matters. God bless America, said Trump in the post. The post followed former Barack Obama's comments on alien life in a podcast interview earlier this week. Right, okay. On February 9th, of course, Obama said that there were aliens, and on February 19th, during a press gaggle on Air Force One, Trump was asked about Obama's answer, and he responded that Obama was disclosing classified information. He's not supposed to be doing that. The president added that he does not have an opinion on the existence of aliens, but noted a lot of people do before asking Fox News reporter Peter Doocy if he believed in it. Well, if the president can declassify anything that he wants to, so if you want to make an announcement, Doocy said. Trump interrupted the reporter and replied, I may get Obama out of trouble by declassifying. During Trump's first term, the U.S. government established the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force. According to an August 4th, 2020 statement from the then Department of Defense, DoD, the UAPTF was established to improve the department's understanding of the nature and origin of UAPs. That would be unidentified aerial phenomena, right, I think. Well, the mission was to detect, analyze, and catalog UAPs that could threaten national security, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So we go on here, quite a long article about this. Anyway, we'll find out. We'll find out whether the U.S., well, I hope we find out whether the U.S. is actually storing dead bodies of aliens. That would be interesting. Or if there are aliens walking among us. Okay. All right. Let's see here. As Pentagon races to deploy AI, operational challenges highlight risks. Okay. AI fighting wars for us. That doesn't sound very good. Defense experts say AI is essential in war, but it comes with mixed success and unpredictable pitfalls. Yes. I would say so. Here, President Trump has signed an executive order to allow glyphosate, and there's some controversy over that, but President Trump said that it's essential for national defense. I'm not sure what that means. You're going to spray weed killer on your enemies? What's going to happen there? But anyway, he signed an executive order on February 18th, propelling the domestic production of elemental phosphorus and glyphosate-based herbicides. On February 19th, this lady told the Epoch Times that the order signals to Bayer and Big Ag that the White House supports them and won't concede to the concerns of Maha. Okay, yeah, something going on there. All right, let's take a look at Breitbart, shall we? We have a few minutes left. All right. Wesley Hunt blasts Cornyn's gun control amnesty record. Okay. Trump pledges to release alien files, a quote, extremely interesting, unquote. All right, we'll see. Tom Homan, there will be mass deportation. See what Tom Homan is saying. Homan said ICE is just doing the same thing that they've done in the last 3 decades. It's just that they've got more work to do now because of the last 4 years of open border, with over 10 million people coming across the border, illegally released into the United States. Many of them public safety threats and national security threats. So yeah, ICE is working harder now because they're responding to 4 years of open borders and 9, no immigration enforcement at all. He added, I will do whatever I can because the president has made a promise to the American people. There will be mass deportation, but it's going to prioritize public safety threats first. And that's just the way we should be doing it. Targeted enforcement operations are a way to go. And for the people for the people who are going nuts, as if you're walking away from mass deportation. Look at the numbers. We already got record numbers to deportation, but arresting the public safety threat first makes sense because you're biggest danger to the community. Okay. All right. And let's see here, Pennsylvania high school principal shuts down student anti-ICE walkout. All right. Hakeem Jeffries, Trump doesn't know what he's doing anymore. Well, they keep saying that, but of course, they were the ones who were saying that to Obama, knew perfectly what he was doing. So, talk about projection. And White House has a lot of the cars on DHS shut down since ICE is funded. Yes, I think the partial government shutdown is still continuing, isn't it? It's hard to tell these days. Okay, and so we have a lot of Democrat propaganda going on here, I see. Stacey Abrams, she's the one who tried to be governor of Georgia but failed, right? This is a country that's in the midst of an authoritarian takeover. And, these people, they don't know what an authoritarian government is like. They've never lived in one. And let's see here. Ilhan Omar says Democrats don't just want to abolish ICE, they plan to dismantle DHS. Yes, I'm sure they do. Looks like she said the quiet part out loud there. Gabon, a country in Africa, shuts down social media as a threat to national security. Well, it's certainly a threat to the establishment, and this is another sign that of the democratization of information and of political power, in some, at least towards that, in a trend towards that. And Taliban okays slavery and domestic violence and updated criminal code. I think we talked about this already. And Hollywood celebrities protest Elite Film Fest for refusing to accuse Israel of genocide. Right? So, the Hollywood party, the political party of Hollywood, and they have become, yes, a very, very leftist organization. And you know, they do a lot of entertaining stuff. You know, I enjoy watching a lot of Hollywood stuff, even though, you know, the people who are doing the acting, when they're not reciting lines written by someone else, they really speak in very ignorant ways, but still. We still send them our money, don't we? Either in terms of Netflix subscriptions or outright tickets at the box office, or in some way or another. Okay, let's see here. All right, I have some good stories here, but they're videos, and I cannot show a video. Oh yeah, President Yoon of South Korea was given a life sentence for his calling of a martial law. But the strange thing, of course, is that you know, within the Constitution, the president does have the right to proclaim a martial law, and then the legislature has the right then to override that, and that's what happened. And so everything seems took place in a constitutional manner, for most part. But you know, I've talked about South Korea's revenge politics before, and they certainly are taking revenge on him in the most. And well, I think it is a little bit of a surprise that they didn't go for the death penalty, but perhaps they'll still go to the death penalty for other crimes that they say that he's committed. I think he still has some other trials coming up that related to the martial law situation. But it's an indication of how South Korea is making a strong turn to the left, and this is exactly what he said when he called martial, when he declared martial law. He said that this was the last hope, last chance, but he did it in a very amateurish way, I would say, and he's paying the consequences now, as is the country as a whole. We'll see what happens with South Korea. It would be great if China could fall apart before South Korea goes too far. Here, the Daily Express, 23 hours ago, says that Iran's strike is coming within hours. But it's already been 23 hours since this report was written. President Trump and top White House advisors held a frantic Iran crisis meeting as a top U.S. ally warns that the U.S. could strike Iran within hours. But this was on Wednesday. That's already the day before yesterday. So we don't know what's going to happen there. And President Trump since then has said 10 days. Within 10 days, he said. We don't know what part of that timeline is where he's going to actually strike. But Not a good idea, not a good idea, not a good idea for people of faith to be going at each other. Okay. All right, gotta go. Thank you for being here today. Apologize for the lack of tech support, and so I could not share my screen, but I'm sure we'll do better tomorrow. God bless, Godspeed, may His kingdom come quickly.